Hey guys, I know I've been slacking a little bit on the YouTube uploads lately, but I've been super busy with MDI stuff. In the meantime, I decided to do a couple dungeon walkthroughs, which are a bit easier for me to produce. During the walkthrough, I'll frequently pause it to talk about things that I'm doing, such as my rotation, purges, focus targets, etc., as well as what the group is doing, and what we could have done better. So this particular key is a 21 Underrot that we did this previous week. The affixes are Fortified, Sanguine, Grievous, and Reaping. Alright, so starting out the key, we're pulling this Matron, Maggot, and all these ticks. So one thing that you really want to do, especially on Fortified, these ticks do a lot of damage to both the tank and they do damage when they explode, right? And so you always want to have some sort of cooldown, especially on Fortified, either Darkness, have Personals. I think we use Rally at this point, so it's very dangerous to pull them on Fortified, but they're also pretty easy if you handle it correctly. So we handled the ticks fine. No one really dies to the ticks. So the other thing that you want to do here, Maggot should always be either CC'd or knocked, right? That breath should rarely go out. If it does go out, you need to be very cognizant and obviously don't be in the middle of the breath because it can basically two-shot you on Fortified. So you want to rotate a series of, gouges. You can use Intimidation. You can use different knocks. If you're a marksman, you can use Bursting Shot, Ring of Peace, etc. It will get DRs, Diminishing Returns, so you cannot just constantly stun it. You have to weave in some sort of knocks. The other important mob here is the Matron. The big thing she does, well, two things. She'll charge random targets and she'll do a big cleave. Obviously, don't stay in the cleave. Her big thing right here that she's about to cast is Warcry. Warcry enrages the attack speed of both her and everything surrounding it. And so we actually mess up here, and so I get the soothe off of on the Matron, right? But what Unit Frames doesn't tell you is that it also buffs the Maggot and everything around it, right? And so right now, the Maggot has that Warcry buff, and we do not purge that Maggot, and that Maggot starts hurting, right? And we actually die a couple times here. Very, very bad start to the key. So our tank is dying right off the bat, right? Because we didn't get that secondary soothe. And so in this group, we have a Druid and a BM Hunter, right? And so both of these should have been soothed. So I soothed the Matron, but we did not. It was just miscommunication. We did not soothe that Maggot. So we recover. It wasn't that big, obviously right off the bat. Just a little rusty. I think this might have been like our first key of the day or something. Alright, so then we go into this 4-pack with the Blood Priest and the Headhunter. The Headhunters can hurt. They throw a net and they deal some damage to you. You just want to be cognizant of interrupting the Blood Priest. They can both heal. They do a Gift of Gahoon, and so right there, we actually let Gift of Gahoon go off, and I purged it right off, right? And so you want to be interrupting these Blood Bolts, especially on Fortified. They hurt. You'll notice that we let a couple go through, and that's because our warrior is spell reflecting them and blowing the priest up with its own ability. So I move him out of Sanguine. And so right here, you also saw I use Aspect of the Wild. Well, this isn't an ideal time to use Aspect of the Wild, right? Like, ideally, you would want to use Aspect of the Wild on the following pack because there's a Matron, it's more dangerous, etc. So why do I use Aspect of the Wild? Well, one, it's on cooldown. You generally want to try and use it on cooldown as much as possible, right? Because we have our rapid reload. So every multi-shot you're casting with your Aspect of the Wild off cooldown, you're wasting potential CDR, right? That's one. Two, if you look at the timing, we have this 3-pack right here, and then we have a 3-pack following, right? So we're pulling a 3-pack, and then we're going to be shrouding to the boss. Well, I want my Aspect of the Wild up for the boss fight. And so if I use it here, by the time we kill the next pack, and with the little bit of cooldown reduction with 3 mobs, right? It's not that much. You get 3 seconds off every multi-shot. So it is a little bit of reduction. But the timing, the way it works out, I'll have Aspect of the Wild up for the first boss, right? And so that's why I use my Aspect of the Wild here. And so you can look like I'm just sort of just doing the normal rotation. 3 targets with rapid reload. You don't really want to be spamming your multi-shot. You do spam, but it's a very low priority. And you can see here I'm still kill commanding. I'm still chimera shotting. Right there we use that Ring of Peace to knock them out of Sanguine so they don't get healed, which is a very crucial thing to do on Sanguine weeks. You need to make sure to have knocks. So we have a Typhoon in our group. We have the Ring of Peace. And then, of course, you always have engineering belts. If your guys are engineering, they have engineering belts. As BM, sadly, we don't have any knock. Marksman does. Okay, so right here, I switched my pet over to the Matron. I soothed the Matron right there. As you can see, that dash that the Matron does hurts a lot on Fortified. So the Matrons are very scary, especially if you don't soothe them. They hurt very much. So again, the Matron comes out, I soothe it. And so what you're not seeing, the Lifebinder is actually soothing the Headhunter, right? Because remember that Warcry buffs everyone around it. And so we're soothing that Headhunter because it hurts. So we let a Gift of Gahoon go off. So right here, I should be soothing that Matron, right? We let that Gift of Gahoon go off, and in this group comp, I am the only purge, right? Aside from Belfs or anything like that. So I switched my priest over to, I switched my pet over to the priest. I purged the priest from the Gift of Gahoon, which leaves the Matron open, and so the Matron does not get soothed, right? So the Matron hurts at this point. Luckily, it dashed to me. I was still full health. It didn't hurt that bad. Just make sure we're getting interrupts here. Knock him for Sanguine. Okay, so something crucial that the warrior does right here, right? So there's a little bit of miscommunication. As you saw, the warrior was dragging the mobs back this way, right? And the Typhoon went this way. So naturally, if the warrior were to stay, right now you see he's leaping, right? If you were to stay on this side, the mobs would come back through the Sanguine because they were knocked on the other side of the Sanguine, right? Which you don't want to do. So you see that the warrior jumps across the Sanguine, and we all position on the other side of the Sanguine. So something you have to be cognizant about with any mob that dashes. So right here, the Blood Matron will dash, right? And so if I was standing on the other side of the Sanguine pool, and the Matron dashes to me, it's getting healed dashing through the Sanguine, right? And so you and your group need to position so that there's no Sanguine pools between you and other dashing mobs. And this goes with all dashing mobs, not just this Matron. And so you see I soothe it there again. We move out of the cleave. We kill it. Okay. Make sure to heal up Grievous before we Shroud. Walk through Shroud. Okay, so now we're going on the boss. So I precast, I do my opener, precast Bestial Wrath, get my barb shots up, then I cast Aspect of the Wild. And you see here how my Aspect of the Wild is up for the boss, right? My timing that I was talking about earlier. So I'm just doing my normal rotation. And so here, this boss is really crucial. You just want to get your interrupts out as much as possible. The Prot Warrior makes this boss super easy because they have Spell Reflect. And if you're weaving in Spell Reflects, it should make this boss pretty easy and whittle the boss down. And so you see right here, the warrior has Spell Reflect available. So I get this first interrupt on the ad, and then he's going to Spell Reflect the second cast on the ad. So watch the ad just get obliterated here. All right, here he goes. Bye-bye ad. Boom. All right, so Spell Reflect just obliterated that ad. Generally, you can either use it on the ad or you can use it on the boss. And so we actually make a mistake later on here. He saves his Spell Reflect for the ad to kill the ad, like as this boss is dying, where he should have used the Spell Reflect to kill the boss. I think the boss had like 5% HP or something like that, and he wanted to kill the ad instead of the boss for some reason, and it actually causes a Blood Bolt to go off at the very end. So yeah, just make sure you have your interrupt rotation. Hunters are usually good for interrupting the ads since we don't really... You only need a 3 melee interrupt rotation on this. Okay, so right here, he uses it for the ad. See, the ad gets chunked, and we let this Blood Bolt go off, or this one. Yeah, so this one, it hurts Snap a lot. Boom. Okay, and then he dies. We kill the boss. Not a huge deal, but that could have been very scary. All right, so right here, as I said earlier, the ticks are very scary to pull, especially on Fortified, especially on Sanguine, right? Because if they don't all die at the same time, they can get healed. They're damaging the tank even longer, right? Okay. Well, here, there are more ticks in this pack than there were at the beginning. So this is an even more dangerous pack than what we were just dealing with. Our personal route, we prefer to skip these packs, and obviously you don't have to. You can pull these, you just need to make sure to have cooldowns available. So if you hug this far right, so I'm stealth right now, but if you walk through and hug this wall right here, anyone without stealth can walk through. So I don't let's see if you can see someone. Yeah, okay, see there. Yeah, so they just walk through and hug that, and they're able to just not pull those ticks. Alright, so then we do this Lasher pack with the Living Rots. So this whole next room, we sort of just chain pull everything, right? And as long as you have all your interrupts assigned, chain pulling is totally fine in this room. There's only a couple dangerous mobs that you need to be aware of. The Disease Lashers are one of them, as you need to have interrupts. And so you can have one melee assigned per Lasher, and they should be able to get every single interrupt. If it's off a little, you can stun the Lasher. It'll delay the interrupt, and then you can interrupt after that. Hunters, obviously, we cannot get a Lasher by ourselves. We need help from someone else. Even with Intimidation, our 24-second will not allow us to solo something. So something that Hunters are usually on, we're usually on Bloodswarmers, because their cast is 24 seconds, and so that works out for us. And so right here, we proc Reaping, so we get a couple of the Reaping mobs initially, and now all the other Reaping is starting to come in. And so with Reaping, especially in Underrot, you always want to try and pull it with some mobs, right? So here, we pull it with these this 3-pack of Lashers. And so we have interrupts going off. I think we actually might let one go off, and it gets a little sketch. But you can see, so I'm not assigned to any interrupts, so I am using my interrupts for Grave Bolts. So we use that Ring of Peace to get them out of Sanguine right there, and we're just sort of killing stuff off right now. So right there, okay, let me fast forward 2 seconds. Okay, so right here, he calls out that he's going to miss this interrupt, right? So right there. So I click the triangle thing, and I intimidate him. Right there, see? We actually also get the stun off. We both stun at the same time, but... Okay, so we're just finishing off Reaping at this point. Okay, so right now, obviously, you can see that I'm sitting on both of my cooldowns, right? Well, I'm not going to use my cooldowns when there's like a mob with like 5% HP, right? That's not very smart. So you want to set on your cooldowns until it's optimal. Okay, so now we're about to pull a bunch of things, right? So we pull a Bloodswarmer, 2 Lashers, and 2 Rots, right? So this is about the standard size pull you want to do in this room. We actually don't get that second Rot. Okay, we just do 4 here. Okay, so a couple things here. One, I am targeting the Feral Bloodswarmer, right? Bloodswarmers are very, very, very dangerous, especially on Fortified weeks. They hurt a lot. So, obviously, you still want to interrupt the Lashers, right? And then if you have the Maggots, you still want to get your stun/knock rotation on them. The Bloodswarmers are there's a misnomer where you want to run away from Bloodswarmers when they charge you. That's false. You do not want to run away, especially you don't want to create distance, because they will close that gap and charge you and keep meleeing you. So what you want to do is you want to put some sort of root, some sort of stun. If you have a defensive, you want to use that defensive and sort of kite them around melee, right? So if you kite your... Okay, so here's the group of mobs that you're killing. If you kite your Bloodswarmer away, that Bloodswarmer is not taking damage, right? Unless people peel off and single target that Bloodswarmer, well then these mobs aren't taking damage, right? And so you don't want to run away with your Bloodswarmer. You actually want to sort of walk in a circle with your Bloodswarmer, or stand still, pop a defensive, or in my case, Hunters have Binding Shot, right? So Binding Shot is awesome, 8-second root. all you have to do is throw the binding shot on top of that Bloodstormer. Whoever is targeted steps 2 steps away, they can still be within melee range, and that Bloodstormer will not do anything for 8 seconds, right? And so looking at, so I throw a binding shot down, right? So he is binded now, and so you can see, wait, where is it? Okay, I think it, there we go. Okay, so he is targeted, right? And the Bloodstormer is literally just standing there, not doing anything, right? And so I get the interrupt, and obviously after that, he will either retarget someone or continue chasing you, depending on his timings. Just make sure to kill him off, get some sort of stun on him, slow, whatever. We use the Ring of Peace right there. We're still getting our interrupts on the Decaying Mind, or the Disease Lashers, I'm sorry, on Decaying Mind, what they cast. Okay, so right there, I don't know if you noticed, but if you don't have this targeting weak aura that I'm using, you can see sort of like names above their nameplates when they cast abilities. It's very, very, very useful. And so just going back right there. Okay, so look at the Disease Lasher. And so at this point, it doesn't really matter because he dies, but we have an ability called Feign Death, obviously, right? And so when mobs target us, and so this works with bosses, this works with adds, any type of caster, this works with Grave Bolts and Reaping. If you have a bunch of Grave Bolts, or if you have a mob like this casting and targeting you, so right here, he's targeting me, right? It says, Moofsy, I'm targeting you with Decaying Mind, right? So if he had a little bit more HP, you watch me, I Feign Death, right? And so if you Feign Death in the middle of their cast, it drops the cast. And so obviously he died, right? So it didn't matter at that point. But if I were to Feign Death, he would not cast that Decaying Mind on me. He would then look and retarget someone else, right? And so especially if you can't get an interrupt or something like that, you want to always be using that Feign Death. In addition, I also have 2 duck and cover traits, right? And so if I did get hit for whatever reason, I would have that shield and it would be a little more safe for me. All right, so we finished this stuff off. This is Reaping, I believe. Is this Reaping? Oh, maybe, I think we kill one more and that's Reaping. All right, so again, Bloodstormer, throw the binding shot down. So you see the monk runs away from the Bloodstormer. He's totally fine. He definitely didn't have to run all the way around, but the other thing I want to point out, this is a Cherry Vodka on his monk alt. And so he's doing a little bit less damage, but we were trying to gear his ult a little because monks are OP right now. All right, so now we proc Reaping. Again, you always want to try and do Reaping with something in Underrot, right? And so we have this 3-pack that we're killing off. I'm pretty sure we pull a Bloodstormer with this Reaping, or we pull this Reaping into something else. Let's see. I don't remember exactly what we do. No, I guess we just kill this Reaping by itself. Okay. A little inefficient. We still had that Living Rot, so it wasn't totally bad, but we definitely could have pulled that Bloodstormer, but we pull all this stuff. This is a pretty big pull. Again, Binding Shot goes down for the Bloodstormer. And so this entire room, we're just chain pulling, right? I'm more or less using my Aspect Wild and cooldowns on... I'm sorry, my cooldowns on cooldown. Sounds weird. Not being super picky when I'm holding them, right? They're all pretty equal right here. And so right here, like this Bloodstormer is obliterating me, right? So but he's past Binding Shot. Instead of running out of the group, like I said earlier, right? I pop a defensive, and when I run out of my survival of the fittest, I sit there inside with Turtle, right? And so this means that, see, look at all, so the monk, everyone is DPSing the Bloodstormer while I'm not taking any damage, right? And so you just want to sit there, pop defensives, sit in the group. Obviously, if you can't handle it, that's, you call out for an external or something. You don't want to try to, again, you don't want to leave the group. Alright, so right here I am sitting on my Aspect of the Wild. I probably didn't need to sit on my Aspect of the Wild. I probably could have saved it. I think I was thinking that, oh, only 3 mobs, they're about to die. Well, they get healed by Sanguine, and so it's not... I'm definitely delaying it longer than I should have. I probably should have used my Aspect of the Wild at this point. Alright, so something we do right here. So you never want to pull 2 Bloodstormers together, especially on Fortified. On Tyrannical, you can get away with pulling 2 together, but like I said earlier, they hurt, very dangerous, right? And so what we do here, we sap one of the Bloodstormers, right? So the mobs we're left with are 2 Bloodstormers, 2 Living Rots, 1 Maggot, and I think maybe 1 Disease Slasher over there, right? And so you generally want to pull in like 4 or 5 at a time in this area, and you don't want 2 Bloodstormers, right? So we sap one, run through, pull everything else. Okay, so it's just these 4, right? So we pull this, we kill that 1 Bloodstormer. Okay, something else I wanted to point out right here is pet management. You can see right here, so the Bloodstormer dashes over next to that CC Bloodstormer, right? It is very scary. My pet was attacking that Bloodstormer. It is very, very scary. If you stomp, if you have Beast Cleave going, anything of that nature, while the Bloodstormer dashes over there, it can obviously break that CC, and then that pull would have gone downhill very quickly if that would have happened. And so I immediately kill command my pet over to the Living Rot. Am I trying to kill the Living Rot right now? No, it's not that important, but it's about pet positioning, right? So I can still be Beast Cleaving, I can still be killing that Bloodstormer, but I'm not in risk of pulling that that CC Bloodstormer, right? And so as soon as I'm able, I throw the Binding Shot down. I change my focus back to the Bloodstormer that we're trying to kill, right? And so now we're focusing it down. Okay, something else I wanted to point out here. I'm going to talk a little bit about my rapid reload rotation, right? And so at 4 targets, you should be still doing your still doing your normal AoE rotation, right? 3 to 4 targets. You still want to kill command. You still want to Chimera shot and stuff like that. You're not really spamming multi-shot that much at this point. This changes a little bit with priority targets, right? If you have a priority target, even 4 or 5 targets, you still want to be casting kill command. You still want to be, see, I use my Murder Crows right there. Generally, you probably wouldn't need to use a Murder Crows right there, but we're trying to kill that Bloodstormer ASAP, right? And so we want to put all of our single target damage into that Bloodstormer to kill it. As soon as it's dead, we pull the other Bloodstormer, right? So now we're single targeting this Bloodstormer. So I put my Crows up. I'm still kill commanding. I'm still trying to maintain my stacks, and so I actually let my stacks drop right there. I think I cast Barb Shot early in the mob before, and so I wasn't able to extend that 3 stack. Okay, so right here, I'm getting wrecked by this Bloodstormer again. I Spirit Mend myself. I use Exhilaration. I'm just trying to keep myself alive. Okay, right here, fail Binding Shot. Fail Binding Shot. I assumed he was going to kite the other way. He definitely kited this way. Very bad Binding Shot. I try and drag this Bloodstormer in, and it times out. It doesn't register. All right, so this is very bad. You do not want to kite away like this. Luckily, it's towards the end of the pull. Not that bad. Okay, this is Reaping, right? So at this point, you have 2 options. It's Fortified, and you can either pull Reaping if you're in a good position with like Lust. So right now we have 40 seconds on Lust, right? And so generally, if you're going to, you always want to Lust Kragmaw, the second boss that we just passed that we haven't pulled yet. You generally always want to Lust him because it can the boss is just nasty. We don't have Lust yet, right? And so we opt into pulling Reaping with this Death Speaker pack, which is very scary. So some things about this Death Speaker pack. Death Speakers have 2 abilities. They cast Raise Dead, which you always want to interrupt because it just summons another animated guardian, which can be very bad on bolstering weeks or stuff like that. And then they also cast Wicked Frenzy. Wicked Frenzy is not innately on your bars, and I actually don't even think I'm tracking it right now. But when they cast Wicked Frenzy, they do 2 things. One, the Death Speaker increases the damage they do. And so as a hunter, you need to soothe Wicked Frenzy when they cast it, or you can stun it to delay the cast of it, etc. Knock it, whatever. There's other things you can do. But if it gets the cast off, you need to soothe that. And 2, it puts a really bad dot on the tank, which is the healer's job to purge that dot off the tank, right? And so we actually mess it up here. So here's that Wicked Frenzy going off. We stun it initially. Alright, so we're just killing Reaping, Raise Dead. So I interrupt that Raise Dead. Raise Dead is also a 24-second cooldown, and so it's really good for hunters to get the Raise Deads, or just casters in general, right? Okay, so we let that Wicked Frenzy go off, and so immediately I try and purge it. So my purge at the bottom of the screen, way down here, you can see this is my purge button. So I purge it, so he is no longer enraged, but the healer does not dispel it off the tank, and so the tank is now taking Grievous, now has 20 stacks of the Reaping Affix, and he has that dot from the Fallen Death Speaker, and so he gets trucked, right? So he's dead. And so at this point, my pet is tanking. We B-res the tank. We recover here. I think our Windwalker gets aggro and dies. Okay, finally, the last thing about this Death Speaker pact that I didn't mention. These Reanimated Guardians have, they cast a shield on them, which increases the damage they do, and it puts a shield on them, right? And so you want to be purging that as much as possible. If you have a Blood Elf, Arcane Torrent gets all of them at once. Demon Hunters can single target purge, etc. So that's something you want to be aware of. That Wicked Frenzy buff is more important though, so while that Death Speaker is alive, you want to be getting that over the shields. Alright, so my pet's just sort of tanking all these while we recover. The warrior doesn't have any threat since he just got rezzed. Alright, so we're just finishing off a little bit sloppy of a pull, but we pull it off. Alright, so we res him, and now we're going to do this boss, right? So now we have Lust, now we can do this boss. Ideally, the timing works out. We're going a little fast, actually. Ideally, the timing works out that you have Lust exactly when this Reaping occurs, and you pull Reaping into the boss. That's ideal. But we're going a little faster than we anticipated, so we just pulled it into that Death Speaker pack, like I said earlier. Alright, so we pop Lust, just doing this boss. This boss is pretty simple. He does a charge, he does Indigestion, which is this breath. Our tank just eats this Indigestion. You can either, so there's two ways of doing this boss. You can tank him on the edge like we're doing, and which makes the charges a lot easier. Which allows the melee DPS to have more uptime on it, and so the maggots that he spews from the charge don't go as far, and so you don't have to walk around as far. And 2, the other thing is that you can tank him in the middle of the room, which makes his tantrums a lot easier, right? So you're already centralized for his tantrums. You don't have to run as far to get to stomp on all the maggots during the tantrum. So two different methods of doing it. Either way works. The big thing here is that you need to assign positions, and so what we usually do, we say, Moose, you're getting exit. Lime, you're getting entrance. Someone's staying where the boss is, someone's going far, and someone's getting center, right? And so you want to assign quadrants to people, because if you have 2 people go in the same quadrant, well, then you're missing an entire quadrant of stuff that you can't step on, right? So this is real shit for me because literally nothing goes in my quadrant. But I run in to help. All right, see, everyone got all their things. We're good. We're recovering. The tantrum is very nasty, and so what you generally want to do healing wise, what we do, like the first tantrum is like personals, like so I'll use survival of fittest, exhilaration, stuff like that. The second one is usually like a healer cooldown, like trank or revival or something. The third one is usually some sort of like health stones, depending on what classes you have. Health stones. I use turtle on my third one, stuff like that. On tyrannical, it can get nasty. You can get 4, even 5 sometimes. Let's see. Yeah, so I think we sort of messed this around. Yeah, so I, for some reason, think that I need Sky Step. I was being really slow, but everyone covered my ass and got them all. So that was sort of a waste of a potion right there. Definitely did not need to do that. But yeah, Skystep is also an option on this boss if you need, if you're a slow class, you need help killing the maggots, or stepping on the maggots rather. All right, so this is Fortified, so this boss doesn't last too long. We sort of just finish it off here. Okay, so at that point, I probably did not need to use my Bestial Wrath. He had 3%, 4% HP. I used my Bestial Wrath, and you can see the top right, I still have an Aspect of the Wild and Bestial Wrath going. I probably should have held them there, but I know it's not a huge deal because we're just killing this solo worm right now. I think we pull... No, okay, we're just killing this solo worm right now. So sometimes you can pull either this 2-pack or like the skellies. Something a lot of people do is you can actually shroud past that first skeletons. So assuming you do reaping with the boss and you don't pull those skeletons like we did, you can shroud past that first pack of skeletons, kill this worm, and then pull 10 skeletons together, right? So 2 Death Speakers plus the 10 skeletons. It's a little sketchy to do on Fortified weeks, but it's definitely possible. And so right now you see that I'm on the Death Speaker. He gets the... we stun the Wicked Frenzy. Actually, I don't think we even let this one go off. Yeah, so we stun it again. So... yeah, so if you stun it so many times, he'll just go default to casting Raise Dead. He doesn't always keep trying to recast Wicked Frenzy. Okay, so we kill him that time before he even gets it off. You can see here, we're just killing these guys. Alright, so I opted to save my cooldowns. So my cooldowns came up towards the end of that pack, right? So I am using my cooldowns right here. Actually, am I using? Okay, no, I don't use my Aspect of the Wild. I probably could have used my Aspect of the Wild. So since these are fortified, like, obviously you wouldn't be getting... So I actually am going like the padding route right here because reaping is right after this pull. Generally, you want to... Oh, okay, let me talk about this. First, generally you want to use your Aspect of the Wild on cooldown, right? So while it's only 2 mobs here, you'll get your Aspect of the Wild back up during reaping, right? And so you'll, like, because of all your multi-shots, you'll get it back up. And so I probably should have used it to kill these a little quicker. Remember, dungeons aren't about overall DPS, it's about how quick you go through, right? And so I probably could have used it here and gotten the same amount of casts. These mobs are more important because they cast Shadow Ball Volley, which is very dangerous. Something right here, they throw out these totems, and you generally don't want to interrupt the totems. It's because all you have to do is move out of the totems. It's super easy to deal with. You want to save your interrupts for Shadow Bolt Volley and the Withering Curse. You always want to get the Withering Curse because that's 30 seconds of decreased damage that your entire party does. It slows down the key. If these totems hit your pet, right? So if you notice right here, this totem comes out. All right. Oh, whoops. All right. So totem comes out. I call my pet back to me, right? So if you don't already, you need a pet follow button, especially in dungeons. As soon as that totem comes out, I pet follow, and my pet follow is macroed into my dash. And so my pet immediately sprints towards me, right? If that totem hits your pet will be stunned for a good 10 to 15 seconds. It's a very, very, very long time. And so you do not ever want your pet getting hit by that. So just make sure your pet's out of that. Send your pet back in with a kill command or something like that. Minimize the downtime, but you do not want your pet to get hit by that. Alright, so we're killing this, and this is reaping. And so I think we actually pull... Yeah, so we pull this 2-pack because, remember, we skipped those maggots at towards the beginning before the second boss room, right? So we need to pull these to make up for it. Alright, so again, I'm on the Death Speaker. I got the Raise Dead. We kill this. We're just killing reaping. So I use my Aspect of the Wild. And so right here, reaping, I am spamming the shit out of my multi-shot, right? So I just use Aspect of the Wild. I have Aspect of the Wild back up in 3 seconds now. and it's back up. All right, so now I am holding my cooldowns because the third boss can be a little nasty sometimes. So there's also another option. If you're not pulling that 2-pack right there, there's also another option of pulling that reaping into the boss, which I'm sure you've seen in like MDI and stuff like that. It can be very sketchy because of the overlap, and so if you go, so I mean, we'll just talk about this boss. So this boss is pretty simple. You have slams, and you need to clear as much mushrooms as possible. The mushrooms that are left up, obviously when they explode, they put a dot on you per mushroom left up, right? So you want to clear all the mushrooms, and you have this little upheaval which clears mushrooms if it's targeted on you. And so by the time the reaping comes, so if you choose to do reaping with this boss, by the time the reaping comes, the reaping is at the boss during this overlap. So this first overlap with the upheavals, with the mushrooms that explode and you have to dodge spores and stuff like that. So you're killing reaping, dodging shadow smashes, dealing with this upheaval, all of, so you see right there, I disengaged into a spore and got a stack. So you're also, so it's very, very, very hectic. Plus you have grave bolts coming out. You're trying to interrupt the grave bolts and stuff. Extremely hectic. And so doable. I'm not saying it's not doable. It's just very, very difficult to deal with. And so you have to be very, very aware of your positioning and stuff during that if you're going to do it with reaping. So if you're not doing it with reaping, obviously this boss is pretty simple. Stuff like darkness will avoid stacks. You generally want to save cooldowns for the explosion. So that explosion that just happened, you want to save cooldowns for. Something with the upheavals that most people aren't aware of, I guess, or just don't play around. You see that I'm disengaging after every upheaval. If you get the upheaval and it's close to the boss, so the upheaval deals damage when it explodes, right? So if you're standing on it, it deals damage to you. The upheaval explodes based on its travel time, right? So if you're on the opposite side of the circle, the upheaval has plenty of travel time and you can just walk out of it. If you're in melee range, so if the boss is right here and the upheaval is right there, you hardly have any time to get out of there, right? And so you need to have a disengage or a cheetah ready to zoom out, because on Fortified, the upheaval won't kill you. On Tyrannical, actually, I don't think it'll kill you on Tyrannical, but it does probably like 80% of your life. Like it chunks you pretty good. And if you get hit by a spore or if you're not topped off, it can easily kill you, right? And so you want to be getting out of there pretty quickly. All right, so I don't ever need to use it this fight, I believe, but if you have Aspect of the Turtle can also clear mushrooms out of the way. And so if you, for some reason, if you have mushrooms still available or still alive that you didn't smash, you can just cheetah or just run through all these mushrooms with Aspect of the Turtle up and you won't take any stacks. In the same vein, if you have Aspect of the Turtle before the big explosion at the end, you won't get any of those stacks. So use Turtle to your advantage here. Multiple uses for it, very good cooldown. Obviously, make sure you're helping your healers out with exhilaration and stuff like that, Spirit Mend. All right, so we're just I just opened MDT just to make sure what we're pulling. All right, so we did sort of a weird route here. We don't actually want any of these. So generally, you'll come down and pull this worm or the defiler here or something. We sort of did a weird route and we're skipping stuff. And so you can actually walk around to the left side and not pull any of this. And so you can walk around to the left side, come through this this tree right here where I'm going. Well, you can go through the tree right there and not pull any of that stuff. And so I just sort of opted to camo and walk around. So you can see a little square. Yeah, okay, so they just came through the tree, pulling this death speaker and stuff now. Oh, we do pull that defiler. Okay, so we pull that defiler into this, which is totally fine as long as we're getting interrupts and stuff. The defiler doesn't really do anything. So we stun that Wicked Frenzy. It's going to cast Wicked Frenzy again here. I think, oh no, we stun that one again. Okay, this one gets through. I soothe it. I don't soothe it. Okay, I'm bad. I should have definitely been soothing that. It dies pretty quickly though, so it's not a big deal. I think the Ressager said he might have soothed it. Oh yeah, but yeah, I mean, there are 4 targets here, 5 targets, and so at this point you're sort of just spamming Aspect of the Wild. The big thing here is that you want to make sure you have Aspect of the Wild available for the boss. So we Shroud past here. If you don't have a Shroud, when this Corruptor right here walks to the left, you can actually just walk up and just jump over this ledge and just hug this far right side, and you won't pull anything. Obviously, it's just a lot quicker and safer to Shroud rather than waiting for his pat. So here, all we need to pull is just these 2 dudes, and then we get Reaping. So after this, actually, let me talk about these guys first. Okay, so they do 2 things. They put little tentacles on the ground, and then they do Maddening Gaze. Maddening Gaze, just don't be in front of them. They will deal a lot of damage to you and stun you, which obviously if you're stunned, you can easily get hit by these tentacles. Maddening Gaze can be knocked, so it can be Typhooned, Ring of Peace, etc., which just allows melee, obviously for us it doesn't matter, but for melee, it allows them to have a little bit more uptime and stay within melee range to deal damage to them and stuff. I don't think we ever knocked them, but... Alright, so I have my cooldowns available. I am saving my cooldowns available. A lot of the times, groups will pull the following Reaping, and so Reaping spawns right after this, 100% Reaping. It's totally unavoidable. The Reaping teleports down with you, and it can be a little sketch because there's a Shadow Smash, so this Shadow Smash they're about to do will finish casting when they hit the ground. Very, very sketch. Be sure to get out of there as soon as possible. And you see that floating Shadow Smash right there. Yeah, so just be sure to get out of that as soon as possible. So a lot of the times, as soon as the tank groups up this last Reaping, you'll pull the boss into it and Lust. We look at our timer and we have 8 minutes left. You know, we're 100% going to time this key. We're not going to 2-chest it, right? Because we know the boss takes about 2 to 3 minutes. And so we're playing the safe. We opt to play it safe. So we just kill the Reaping. Obviously, pulling the boss with all this stuff is a little more sketch because you have all the spores, and then you have the breath thingy he does. Yeah, so we just kill this, pretty simple. One thing I did want to point out, for this Reaping, your pet automatically dismisses itself when you jump down, and so if you notice, let's see, where is it? Okay, so see I have no pet right here. I actually come down and summon my pet as soon as I land. My pet's there, and then we're good, right? So just be aware. It's very annoying. I don't know why it doesn't just teleport with you like a lot of the other places, but yeah, just be sure to summon your pet right there. All right, so let's go back, finish this Reaping. All right, so now we are pulling this last boss. So one of the things you want to do on this boss, especially if you have Gale Callers, if you don't have Gale Callers, it doesn't matter, you're BM Hunter, whatever. I have Gale Callers, and so I always line up my Gale Callers with my Aspect of the Wild, and so you want to drop your Gale Callers in a prime position, right? So I have my Aspect of the Wild available before he does this breath, but I wait to use my Gale Callers until after he uses his breath, right? So I disengage on the other side of him, throw my... I don't even have Gale Callers available right now, but that's the mentality you want to have, right? So you want to wait until he does the breath. Same thing for like Marksman. If you're playing Marksman on this boss, you don't want to True Shot, then have to move for breath, and then keep True Shotting, right? As soon as he does the breath, you want to disengage, True Shot, pop cooldowns, etc. Really any caster, that's just sort of the mentality you want to have. All right, so boss is pretty simple. The method we're doing, and so if you don't know, he does not spew the gray shit directly behind him, or if it does go behind him, it's like very minimal. And so you want his back facing the path that you're going to, right? And you want him facing, and all of you need to be baiting towards the shit that just spewed out, right? And so we all have our backs towards the shit that just happened, right? So he spews in that same direction. We go towards his back. There's hardly anything that comes out behind him. He always has stuff come out to the left and the right of him. And so if someone's baiting incorrectly and they're baiting towards the outside or the inside, you're going to get shit. So just be aware. You just always want to try and be behind him when he vomits like that. Again, turn the boss around. Like super simple, super methodical. You always want to try and be in the yellow circle. Just keep moving around. So if you need, you can multi-shot these spores when it starts. So like these spores die with one hit, right? And if you multi-shotting the spores is not totally a bad thing, because remember, you multi-shot, the more targets you hit, the more aspect of wild reduction you get, right? So you can totally, I wouldn't do it consistently, but you can throw out you see right there, I tried to click the spores and it disappeared. You can throw out a multi-shot and you'll get five seconds off of your aspect of the wild. It really just depends on timings, if you need it or not. Now, you know, you're not going to want to spam spores just to get that cooldown reduction, right? That's not worth it. Okay, so at this point, this is the final mob. So if you don't know how this boss works, 3 rounds, 2 blood visage each, right? So you damage him to 60, or you damage him, 2 blood visages come out. You kill the blood visages, they bring him to 60% of his HP. Damage him more, 2 more blood visages come out, they bring him to 30% of his HP. And finally, you damage him some more, and then 2 last ones come out and kill him, right? So as soon as the last blood visages come out, there's no use killing the boss anymore. And so you see we all immediately turn to the blood visage and just start killing this blood visage, because as soon as this dies, the dungeon's over, right? So he comes over, helps us, boom, dungeon's over. All right, that is it. That is our 21 Underrot. Had 5 minutes left despite the super sketch things at the end. And there we go. Thank you guys for watching. I will try and do some more dungeon walkthroughs in the near future. I do plan on finishing the marksman walkthrough with the AoE video guide, so stay tuned to that. Hopefully I'll have a little bit more time when MDI things settle down. We've been doing time trials and stuff like that, so thank you for being patient. Y'all are awesome. Thanks for watching. Thanks, guys.